Right, Rich, we'll go to the last series now, the DRX EDG one. I want to start with you on this one because obviously I think this is also where people don't watch those Asian regions because you'd have to have gone pretty deep to know how good these teams are. These aren't the big names. Some of these ones might not even have been at Worlds. That's the scenario they were in. So these are the ones where I notice there's the least interest around this particular matchup. Yeah. There's the least hype. So what's your angle on it? What's your angle on EDG DRX?
I think EDG are heavy favourites. Part of this is based on my own observable research, and also part of it is based on leaning on, for example, when I did the team rankings with Monty, sure, part of it is showmanship or whatever, but the DRX supposedly were like just didn't even deserve to be there was the large take before Worlds. And having watched their games, like I think a lot of people, probably Monty included, would even say that like maybe they've looked better than they did in the LCK Gauntlet, or specifically in summer. But I feel like if you contextualize the two games in groups which they won, which mattered, let's say, one is the second Rogue game where Rogue played where the game was over like immediately, and then Tez when Tez was not Tez, if that's fair to say, like just a horrible like week one read. Like I don't feel like they've shown me anything spectacular yet where I'm like, okay, this is now suddenly like a contending team. I think the thing with EDG, which I'd be most concerned about if I was a DRX fan, is that their supposed biggest weakness, and I sort of highlighted this earlier, coming into the tournament was Flandre, right? And I think Flandre has been very good. People might not have long enough memories to remember that Flandre actually did used to be really good in the past as well, but obviously not been so good in the past year or so. But Flandre has looked really good since he's come in. He's relied a little bit on the Fiora maybe, but which you can argue, you know, when you're matching up against Chinese teams and so on, won't work as well. But obviously it's he's now playing against an LCK team. I expect his form to continue to be what I've seen so far. I think that they're basically strong everywhere now. I mean, GG's had a couple of interesting games, let's say, but Scout is just like a very solid mid laner who I think matches up well against anyone in the world, quite frankly. Viper, this is the only small thing I would have disagreed with what you said earlier, Thorin. I think Vipers are better than Ruler. I think they're the two best for sure, but I just think Viper is so fucking good at League of Legends.
I mean, by the way, I do mean as a 1-2 punch though.
Oh, sorry. Okay, then yeah, but regardless, I just think this guy is so fucking good at League of Legends, and it was in what game was it? It was in the Fnatic game where, the Fnatic game where they had the bug, the Darius bug. But the way he was playing these fights was like fucking mind blowing. Like, go back and watch those fights, because if people forget, it was a very close game. Fnatic was actually ahead for portions of that game. So a lot of these fights, it's on him because he's the guy who has to be staying alive and dishing out the damage, but also positioning aggressively enough that he can't just be, trying to survive and last it as he's cutting away. And he's going in and out. It's fucking nuts. Like, I think this guy has shown the highest level of skill expression at Worlds so far. And yeah, I just think, as I said, I would have liked them beforehand anyway, based a lot on the conjecture of what the perception of DRX was going in, but also based on how play-ins and groups have gone. I think DRX have been fine. Like, absolutely. I think they're not a bad team, but I like this matchup a lot for EDG, principally because I thought they were a better team beforehand anyway, and they've shored up what was their biggest weakness, which now is probably actually an advantage for them in this matchup, weirdly. And where are they weaker? I mean, they're stronger in bot lane if we just go like position for position. Mid, I guess you can make an argument, but I just think because of the laning deficiencies, I think you have to give it to Scout, in my opinion. And I think, now they have an advantage topside. So for me, EDG comfortably favored in this one. I would be surprised if it was 5 games. 3-1, 3-0 EDG. 3-1, 3-1. I wouldn't give EDG that much credit to not think they won't fuck up a game. 3-1.
Yeah, I actually think that EDG are big favorites as well. But I want to hop it on the and go Flandre a little bit, right? Because I think Flandre is the opposite of a lot of these a lot of the Asian players when they play at big events, where Asian players will experience a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. Whereas I think Flandre's performance, which is one of the things that I always thought was a little bit more interesting. I mean, of course, I don't know this 100% for sure, but just from observing the way that he plays, hearing the way that people talk about him, is always like, if Flandre cares, if Flandre wants to win, then he can win, you know? Is that if you, there's this model of like stress and performance, right? Where you have a bell curve, and at the very center is where you are able to perform at your best, but you experience the right amount of stimulation, right? If you're overly stressed, you're overly stimulated, you tend to choke because your fight or flight kicks in. But if you're not stressed enough, and there's something that people don't realize, is that you can actually be under stressed as well, is that you don't care and you go into autopilot. And I've always felt that watching Flandre, that has been his problem, right? He loses focus, he doesn't feel stimulated enough in these games. Now, of course, this is, I'm not a sports psychologist and stuff like that, but I've always felt that one of the things that Western teams have that the Eastern teams don't spend enough focus on is probably resources like that to help a player like Flandre, right? That this is, his inconsistency comes about not because from a lack of presence of mind, not because he's a choker, but he just sometimes it feels like he doesn't care about the game. And that's my general read on Flandre, and which is why I think that when it comes to playing at Worlds, that problem fixes itself, right? Because the stakes go up, he plays against better opposition, he will look down on his opponents, and then he will be stimulated to play the game accordingly. But with regards to the rest of the map, I haven't really taken a deep dive into like DRX and how do they play the game. I know the broadcast has been calling them the fifth LPL team because basically what was it, 4 or is it all of their players have played the LPL before, right? But my impression is that I think that EDG should be the favorites because across the map I think they're just the better team.
Like, the big problem I have with my read on EDG is it's the same reason why I think they were so slept on last Worlds, whereas people will know I literally did pick them as my team from before the quarters began to win Worlds. And the reason why was I actually think they have what is a really hard team to pull off, but it's in theory one of the best ways you could play the game, which is they have all the players. Like, as in, they don't have like a one player you must, like, even though they have Viper, you don't have to only play through Viper. You don't, it's not like when Mystic used to play in the LPL and the whole team was like oozy eye shit of like, just get Mystic in the team fight and fucking peel. Like, it wasn't like that. Like, in this team, they played through Flandre when they wanted to, when he had the Graves last year in top lane. If they wanted to through mid lane, Scout actually was doing really well last Worlds. He was like a sleeper MVP of the whole fucking thing. He was looking awesome. There, the JJ guy smurfed a little bit too much. Maybe that was an overperformance. But by the way, Mako will forever, because here's the thing, in the same way as you notice in a European League of Legends, is always my angle. Everyone with fucking eyes can see the guy who goes aggro and plays fucking Silas mid lane or plays Pike support. It's obvious your fucking eyes are telling you he's popping off. What you can't see, because it's hidden in nuance, is when a fucking Orianna player is popping off, when someone who is playing a Nami is popping off, because by definition they don't look like they are popping off. They're just like gradually applying like pressure and overall advantages and damage, and it's only at the end of the game you're like, bloody hell, why did the other team never get in that game? So Mako will forever be underrated, by the way. Whereas Ming, when he goes ham, it's obvious he's a fucking sicko. Mako will always be the one where it's like, oh, it was just all Viper. It's like, no, bro, like, this guy is another bona fide like legend Hall of Fame guy who's still good now. He's still good now. Remember, the joke was he used to be with Deft all those fucking years ago at Worlds. They're both here now. So I actually think the thing about EDG is they can almost choose, like, I don't think the meta can destroy them. I don't think they can just get taken out by one team. I think they're going to match up against everyone they play pretty well. Then the thing about the DRX side is this. I personally think they're just a paper tiger. Bear in mind, they won their group, and it was a group that had like the best EU team and then one of the best Chinese teams. I don't give a fuck. Like, Rogue fell apart in week 2 and Top didn't even look good until they weren't in the tournament anymore. Like, I don't really care about DRX's performance. Then I look, their mid laner is just literally getting to pick the 2 champions he's fucking good on. And then even then, it's not like he just destroys everyone. He just does well. So I look at their team. The joke is they are the most boring LCK team. I can see why Monty likes them on some level, because they just play like the fucking by the numbers League of Legends. Like, right, it's actually how every fan complains on Reddit they want their team to play if their team's Fnatic or something some top esports. But the truth is, you don't. It'd be the most boring League of Legends ever. Like, here's what you want. When your team gets a team wipe on the opponent, so there's one guy left, or the death time, you want them to base race and rush there and try and fucking knock the towers down and have a really big fight under the towers as the guys are coming off the spawn and see to the end of the game. You don't want them to go, right, really boring, like, let's check our portfolio, let's go back and check the dragon, and then Baron's in 2 minutes, set up vision and check that their vision. You don't want that, because that's actually not sexy. What's sexy in League of Legends, I've always thought this, is fucking team fights. It's why I knew people were just biased against the LPL. Everything they told me they wanted from League of Legends, the LPL always gave you, like action, ganks, fighting, skirmishing, get one player, give him the ego through the roof and just give him the carry champion, so fuck it, 1v9. Everything you guys want was always there, but because it isn't with like Kobe and Freak telling you this is what you like, and because it isn't like, I am from America, I am an American hero, because it's not all the fucking TV WWE shit, you can't take it. It's not palatable to you. The joke is it's actually like Chinese food. You don't know what Chinese food is. You have it in America, by the way, it's got all like fucking grease and salt and all shit. It's just like some fucked up like cartoon version of it. If you ever go to China, it tastes totally different, mate. Like, it doesn't have the same strength of flavour, the spices are different, so people just don't have the palate for the LPL. So basically, I don't think people actually know what EDG is good at. I think they just still think like, I mean, Scout was like the fakest pro. Like that's just a good narrative. There's nothing to do with how they play the game. So I think their team's mad balanced and always has been. I think the best thing about that is, unlike every other bloody team in the universe, they go to Worlds and the meta can't just crush them flat. They could play badly. So for me, the problem with DRX is I think they're the most basic bitch team in the whole fucking tournament. I think it's a joke they're even in this part of the tournament. The only reason I was taking them on SI is because they're fucking underdogs and whatever. If I get them a good odds, I might go with them in that sense. But I don't believe they can actually win. I think DRX has the lanes to win. I don't think they have the team to win. I don't think they have the champions. I don't even think if you're EDG, you need to like pinch a lane. No, you can just fucking draft the better champions, mate. You're going to win this series. So, Jensen, come on, hit me. Is there some angle there you want to jump in on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you describe EDG is they're a chameleon, right? So when I looked at the stylistic matchup between EDG and Domon last year, I had to draw like a whole matrix of possibilities in terms of how these teams might match up against each other before I came to a conclusion, which is unlike what I had to do for other teams, whereas very clearly this is the style, this is the blueprint, this is what you can expect. So, but I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, right? With regards to EDG, they're just better players across the board. I don't think DRX, they reveal any form of potency in terms of like being particularly effective, like the way Gen G plays, where they're going to hit this late game scaling, team fights and stuff like that. I mean, they're basic, they're boring, and they don't even achieve that, right? And neither are they like Damwon, where they can have this play on two lanes that can really contest EDG's play on the side lanes as well. So I think that across the board, from early game to mid game, and even in the team fighting, EDG is just the better team, and I don't really see an angle where DRX can come out ahead.
If people don't know as well, by the way, because I'll give you a little bit of insight, I always like to like sort of pull the curtain back and break the fourth wall for a moment. If people don't know, if Monty has a whole vision in mind and he's setting up the whole thing like it was an extended Decimate, I'm not just going to jump in. That's only what an idiot on Reddit or Twitter would do. Jump in and go, actually, Monty, I don't want to derail the guy. He's setting me up. He's painting the whole picture. I'm just sitting back with a pina colada. Go, Monty. You're the fucking best at it, mate. Yeah, and then how would they do that? And then what do you think about this guy? And what's going next? Like, that's what he's the best at. And in that role, I become the host. And also, if I don't have really good angles, like obviously Monty makes a lot of his points that he'll tie to a specific game point of knowledge. I don't have that knowledge base, so I can't battle him there. I can maybe say, well, what about this stuff? Hasn't that guy sort of choked it? If you notice, I always use player performances the way I try to push and pull Monty a bit. I can't go head to head with him in some like chess match of League of Legends. So if you ever watch Summon Insight, you'll think on that show that EG's garbage is not going to win, because I can't. I have to use the narrative build up in this way. That's why I have to let Jensen tell me his angle and then see if I can build off that. So I don't think that this is like some big DRX favour. So, Rich, what's your angle on this?
I mean, the saddest thing for me, just checking the bracket now, is that EDG will play Genji if things go as expected in the next round, where I was going to say I probably have those two as the best teams actually at Worlds for me. As I said, I'm not a massive JDG believer. I think T1 could potentially be fake news. And RNG, I mean, RNG, as I said, there were a lot of people's like dark horse before the tournament, but they've not given me recent reason to believe like that they're going to be right up there. I do think these are the two best teams in the league. And unfortunately, because Riot doesn't like double a limb or whatever, they might just meet in the round after this. But yeah, I don't see an angle for DRX to win, quite honestly. I'm not sure what it is. And again, in terms, to your point, Thorin, in terms of like the minutiae of how these teams play from like a macro perspective, I wouldn't say, particularly with DRX, because as I sort of suggested, I didn't watch them even do their gauntlet run in LCK. So I don't really have the sample size to theorize an angle where they can win. And if we go default to the carries and be like, what about Deft? What about Zeka? It's like, well, bitch, I mean, Viper is better than Deft. Like, Deft's a legend. He's one of the GOATs of AD carry right here, right now. Viper's the best for me. And in mid lane, no, I don't have Zeka over Scout. And even if we class both those matchups as washes, I still think that you can argue that EDG wins everywhere else anyway. So yeah, I can't create a narrative or an angle where I'm like, but what if this happens? It would have to be in the same way that lots of people are like calling for Rogue to make some, some back-to-back cheesy drafts or something. I would argue you have to do the same if you're DRX. You have to get around the fact that, as Thorin said already, that the mid laner doesn't have a massive champion pool and he's not like favored in that matchup necessarily anyway. You have to overcome that. You have to overcome the same situation that your secondary carry or primary carry, however you look at it in Deft, is not going to most likely have his leg over in that matchup. So yeah, I think this is a cheese draft angle if I'm using my sort of plebeian analysis here. And I would argue that they need that more than Rogue need it in the JDG matchup. I think that is a closer matchup, Rogue versus JDG, than EDG versus DRX. As I said, I think the Rogue game Rogue match could go 5 games. I do not see this going 5 games in almost any universe. So very difficult matchup for DRX, and I expect we will see EDG playing Genji in the next round, which will be a banger. But yeah, it would be sad for me that it wouldn't be in the final.
I'll just want to tie that also to the point I made earlier about like the boring, like the mage mid laner and the fucking Ginchanter support player. Similarly, right, the other thing, this is the mad thing about League of Legends. Why do people think those mages always are relevant for minimum 1 split, if not present, while the fucking other melees and stuff are there and the roaming shot? Why are they always there, guys? Because they are the most consistent way to play League of Legends. And not only that, when your player plays consistently on one of those in the mid lane, everyone else falls in line. They become streamlined, and you know how you're going to play, and if you're going to have push, if you're going to have a lead, what the jungler can do. It's brilliant. It's fucking perfect. That's why if you're someone like Scout, you'll always be underrated, mate. Because what everyone will do now, right, is if even the people who do watch the LPL, Jensen, they're going to go, yeah, but look, it's all well and good playing like an Azir or an Orianna, but when you play against like the fucking Silas, it's like, you mean Knight Silas, you mean Rookie on those champs. Yeah, those guys are going to spank you, because guess what? Those are like the GOAT players on super strong pop-off champions. He's playing against Zeka now, mate. Like, I'll worry about when he gets to Chovy, and then Chovy's more on there. I love the Azir. Like, so I think that angle as well is a weird one to me. It's like people take these champions. I know they do it, like, funnily enough, within domestic regions, obviously based on their own experience of the champion in solo queue, which just kills me inside. Like what's mad is Emily Rand watches every fucking game of League of Legends in the universe. Why is she ever telling me what it's like in solo queue when she plays with a champion or sees a champion? Like, here's why I'll tell you, spoiler, someone from Riot has coached her that's like a way you relate to the fans, and like that'll make people understand what you're saying. She would never do that. She would tell me about how Rookie plays against this guy, and of course then he had a matchup though later on in the tournament against Yagao, and then he played with Kanavi. Like, that's what she'd normally hit me with. So I think people always underestimate, just like they do on those champions, because essentially what they think in League of Legends is the thing I've been battling uphill my whole career with on the Froggen angle, is they really think that Froggen was just scared to fucking play like Fizz and just flash in all the time. It's like, no, he was playing a different style of League of Legends, you morons. Like, that, it wasn't that he was easy who, and he's like, I'm just not Faker, I guess I'm just a nerd kid in class. Like, no, he just was the best at a different style of League of Legends. So to me, Scout's another one where he's just a really fun, and again, he'll never be the best player in the world, but when is he ever like the reason you lose the series? Like, he's just a fucking really solid player. And if someone like Zeka, by the way, has any bad games, ever gets caught in drafts, it's over. Scout will just put that bar here and you ain't going to clear it, mate. So, Jensen, do you have any final angle on this matchup for us?
Scout is definitely, he suffers from success, right? It's like he's not known for having a very limited specialized champion pool. He's not known for being particularly good at one champion or being limited to one playstyle. He just plays everything, and as a result of that, he doesn't have a very particular stylistic identity. But narrative-wise, that's not sexy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the reason why he suffers from success, because he's just too good at doing everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the real joke, by the way, is like, that's why I can't handle that bloody the Koreans haven't embraced this guy. You should love him. He's like the ultimate fucking Korean mid laner. It's like exactly what you guys want. Yeah, go on, Rich.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, by the way, to your point, Thorin, I find it mind blowing, and I've said this like year on year on year on year. There are two things that I don't understand, which aren't implemented more, especially from a Western perspective. The first one is when principally because we are typically outmatched, right? Like typically our teams are not as good as the Eastern counterparts. There are two things which are super important in my opinion, which the all-time great teams or the potentially all-time great teams have opted into, which is comfort and cheese. Like the idea that you become meta slaves when you're playing against like the best teams in the world. Like there's a reason, by the way, guys, why it's not just that, Orianna and Ryze again. It's not just that they're getting buffs every world. Like people will default towards this comfort style, this sort of default can work against any region style. It's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in this sense. And also I just think that when you look at, for example, 2019 G2, even this year's Rogue, which is, probably not 2019 G2, but they're one of obviously the better European teams. The combination of embracing comfort and the willingness to play things which aren't completely meta do yield success. And sure, that might just be catching someone off week one in a best of one, or it might be your ability to adapt later or deeper into a series. But whenever you're outmatched, as I said, the idea that you look at the pool of meta champions and you think these are the parameters in which we have to operate is mind-blowing to me. And it doesn't make any sense on a one-off tournament. If you want to say, in spring, I want to teach you guys the fundamentals of how to play League of Legends, so we're going to go for the meta, but okay, fair enough. But we're at Worlds. Like, there's not even a double elimination bracket, right? So it's one chance. And I think that Rogue, particularly with Lucian Nami, which is meant to be out of meta, and these style of champions that Trimby particularly likes to play, like no one was like thinking Lux is a champion to watch before this fucking world started, right? But he has that option. Even the Nasus, and this is a point we made really early on to what you said, Thorin, even though the Nasus was horrible, because he did it in not a meaningless BO1, but a BO1 when they were already through, that's still useful. That's still like, okay, fucking hell, this guy really does play anything. He might even whip out the Nasus if the opportunity presents itself again in a good matchup. Like, those things really matter. And I don't think that teams in general utilize those opportunities enough. And if I'm Zeka, for example, I would be playing things that are not my two favorite fucking champions against teams that I should definitely beat in BO1s just to make people think twice. Maybe you play the meta champion that everyone else can play, but you're not very good on, but you play it against some shit Western player and you look like a god. And then all of a sudden the whole dynamics of the bracket change. How are we going to draft against this team? Is he actually good at it? Or was it just the matchup against that particular player? So yeah, that's something that's just frustrated me until Kingdom Come, and I think it applies on every level. I think it applies in the local leagues, like in LEC, in LCK, whatever, but especially on the world's level. So yeah, I find that very frustrating. But again, that's why as well I think that Rogue have a legitimate chance of going through, because I do believe that they have embraced that. And Rogue is a confidence-based team. Like if you catch them on the right day, or the wrong day, if you're the other team, I guess, they can, I don't want to say like beat anybody, but like they can put up a good fight against the vast majority of teams in the world.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.